They say history repeats itself, but sometimes it just gets weirder. This week, we're diving into 3 strange but true moments from the past. A teenage queen dethroned in under 2 weeks, a desperate attempt to stop a terrifying disease, and a royal marriage that somehow didn't end in an execution. Welcome to Strange but True History for the week of July 6th through the 12th. Let's get into it. On July 6th, 1885, a 9-year-old boy named Joseph Meister stumbled into medical history. Terrified, wounded, and desperate, he had been mauled by a rabid dog near his home in Alsace, France, leaving him with more than a dozen bites. In those days, a rabies bite was almost always a death sentence. Victims died in agony, often raving with fever and unable to swallow water, hence the name hydrophobia. There was no cure, no treatment, just time and terror. But Joseph had one unlikely hope: a chemist named Louis Pasteur. Pasteur wasn't a doctor. He was a scientist known for breakthroughs in microbiology, pasteurization, germ theory, vaccines for chicken cholera and anthrax. He had spent years studying rabies in animals, developing a potential treatment using weakened strains of the virus. But he had never tested it on a human. To try it now would be a gamble, a medical Hail Mary. Pasteur agonized over the decision. If the boy died, he could be charged with manslaughter. But if he did nothing, Joseph would surely die. With permission from the boy's mother and consultation from 2 physicians, Pasteur took the risk. Over the next 10 days, he injected Joseph with a series of 13 increasingly potent doses of his experimental rabies vaccine. Each dose had been developed in rabbits, then dried to weaken the virus. Joseph didn't get sick. In fact, he lived. The experiment was a shocking success. Word spread quickly, and soon desperate people from across Europe were flooding Pasteur's lab, begging for treatment. Pasteur would go on to save hundreds of lives, and his rabies vaccine became one of the first successful human vaccinations in modern history. His bold decision not only changed the fate of one small boy, but altered the course of medicine forever. Today, the name Louis Pasteur is etched in scientific history. But behind that legacy was a terrified child, a dog bite, and one of the greatest medical gambles ever made. On July 10th, 1553, 16-year-old Lady Jane Grey, a young woman who never wanted the crown, was declared Queen of England, not by birthright, but by political maneuvering that would seal her fate. Jane, a quiet, intelligent young woman, was used as a pawn in a deadly game of thrones. When King Edward VI lay dying, he bypassed his half-sisters Mary and Elizabeth in favor of Jane, a Protestant like him, hoping to preserve the religious Reformation in England. Behind this move, Jane's father-in-law, John Dudley, the Duke of Northumberland, who sought to retain power by placing his daughter-in-law on the throne. At first, Jane resisted. She wept, pleaded, and insisted she was not fit to rule. But under pressure from her ambitious family, she finally accepted the crown. But Jane's reign lasted only 9 days. The country's loyalties quickly shifted. The people, outraged by what they saw as a stolen throne, rallied behind Mary Tudor, the rightful heir. Mary raised an army, marched to London, and declared herself queen. The tide turned fast. Jane was deposed, arrested, and imprisoned in the Tower of London. And then came the cruelest twist. Mary initially spared Jane's life, perhaps seeing her as a victim. But a Protestant rebellion in 1554, one that used Jane's name as a rallying cry, changed everything. Fearing Jane could once again become a symbol of resistance, Queen Mary signed her death warrant. On February 12, 1554, Jane was led to Tower Green. She carried a prayer book in her hands and wore a simple black gown. Blindfolded and trembling, she lost her way to the block and cried, "What shall I do? Where is it?" A bystander guided her hand, and with one swing of the axe, the 9-day queen was no more. Her brief reign and tragic death have echoed through history ever since. A haunting tale of a girl born into power she never asked for and destroyed by the very crown that was forced upon her. On July 12, 1543, King Henry VIII of England married wife number 6. He was nearing the end of his reign and his patience. He was bloated, paranoid, and infamous across Europe, not just for breaking from the Catholic Church, but for the grisly fate of several of his former wives. So when 31-year-old Catherine Parr married him on July 12th, she knew exactly what she was walking into. A royal court full of scheming nobles, bloody politics, and a king who had already executed 2 wives and divorced 2 more. But Catherine Parr wasn't like Henry's other queens. She was older, educated, fiercely intelligent, and strategic. She didn't marry for love. In fact, she was already in love with another man, Thomas Seymour, the brother of Henry's 3rd wife, Jane Seymour. But refusing the king wasn't an option. Saying no to Henry could be dangerous, even fatal. So Catherine played the game. From the moment she took her vows at Hampton Court Palace, she became more than a queen. She became a master political survivor. She took charge of Henry's household, helped reconcile him with his daughters Mary and Elizabeth, and even acted as regent when he left for war in France. Catherine was also passionate about religious reform. She published books on faith and encouraged open discussion, but that almost got her killed. Conservative factions at court accused her of heresy, and Henry actually signed a warrant for her arrest. But Catherine, ever the strategist, humbled herself before him just in time. She claimed she only debated religion to distract him from his ailments. Henry, flattered, rescinded the warrant. She had outmaneuvered the king and lived to tell the tale. When Henry died in 1547, Catherine outlived him, becoming the first of his wives to do so. She finally married her true love, Thomas Seymour, shortly afterward. But even that didn't end happily. Their scandalous marriage caused waves at court, and Catherine died just a year later after giving birth. Still, Catherine Parr remains one of the most underrated power players in Tudor history. She walked through fire and survived the most dangerous marriage in England, not by luck, but by wit, patience, and strategy. From a doomed teenage queen to a risky vaccine that worked, to the only woman who managed to marry Henry VIII and live, this week proves that history doesn't have to be boring. It can be strange, surprising, and a little dark. Which of these events shocked you the most? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to check out our full This Week in History playlist. We've got even more curious tales waiting for you there. See you next Sunday. Please like, share, and subscribe.